Let's talk about Chapter 15 of Boruto TBV Vortex. I don't know if this is a popular or unpopular opinion, but personally, I think this might be my favorite chapter since chapters 4 and 5. It might even be my favorite TBV Vortex chapter overall. There were a couple things I was a bit iffy on, but this was by far the most interesting chapter in a while, and that's really been Boruto's strong suit for a while, being interesting. So this felt far more like a Boruto chapter than pretty much the rest of TBV Vortex. But let's break this chapter down a bit. One thing this chapter did really well, unlike chapter 14, is actually moving the plot. Chapters 13, 14, and 15 were all dialogue heavy, exposition focused chapters, but that does not mean they are inherently boring. Just like when Obito explains the truth about Itachi or when Sasuke talks to the Edo Hokage. Those are each 8 chapters of exposition, but they're engaging exposition. Chapter 15 of TBV Vortex managed to address multiple plot threads in this one chapter, some more subtle than others. Compared to chapter 14, where all we got was recap, Ibiki acting out of character, the interrogation making no sense, and for actual good content we had Shikamaru forgetting omnipotence and reconfirming his resolve, Ino's betrayal, and Mitsuki freeing Boruto with Shikamaru's new strategy, chapter 15 gave us so much more. You have Ryu's goofy personality, the situation with Gaara and Shinki, how Matsuri and the Sand Village came into contact while investigating Orochimaru's hideout, Boruto's troublesome situation with Momoshiki and the Karma Seal, Boruto and Kawaki's temporary alliance, Kawaki's next move to power himself up, Amado's sussy shenanigans, Amado discovering that Koji is alive, Koji's disappearance, Code's whereabouts and next move, the Shinju's feelings and plans for Code, and so on. This was a nice change of pace, quite literally. Pacing aside, let's get into the actual contents of the chapter. I have a lot to say, so I'll be trying something new this month and breaking the chapter down into 3 parts, going over things I like, things I dislike, and interesting bits of foreshadowing and narrative elements to keep an eye on moving forward. If you like this segmented review style, make sure to like this video and let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions or other chapter related thoughts. But anyway, working in chronological order, this chapter starts off with a flashback of Matsuri vs Gaara and Shinki's squad, and this might piss some people off, but I think this flashback scene was executed infinitely better than the one with Boruto and Sasuke. It's just the honest truth. They actually took the time to show the scene of Shinki making his last stand, rather than just cutting away and showing the end result after the fact like they did with Sasuke. This is what I wanted them to do with the Sasuke flashback. Actually show the claw grime overwhelming him as he slashed down as many as he could. I have no idea why they gave Shinki the better treatment over Sasuke, but at least it's an improvement in the right direction. In the anime, we'll probably fix the Sasuke scene like they do everything else. I also like Gaara and Shinki's back and forth attempts to protect each other. You could feel their desperation. Now I understand that there's more to the Sasuke flashback than we initially thought based on Boruto's dialogue later in the chapter, where Momoshiki apparently took over Boruto during the fight against Code, so you might argue that it's unfair to criticize the Sasuke flashback in chapter 5 since we might see more of this fight later on. However, while I understand that perspective, my point still stands, because what I wanted to see from the Sasuke fight doesn't interfere with whatever happens with Momoshiki at all. We know that Sasuke charges towards Code and his army and eventually gets bitten by a claw grime. Those are our start and end points. What I'm asking for is just a little bit in between. I just want to see Sasuke slash down some claw grime when he first charges towards them in a cool fight sequence, then watch him get overwhelmed and bitten at the end. I'm not asking for the entire fight, especially if we assume that there's more to the story involving Momoshiki. I'm asking for a couple of panels, 1 to 2 pages max. That's the difference between the Sasuke flashback and the Shinki flashback. We saw Shinki's final moments on screen. There's still some context to explain. We don't know how Matsuri even knew to check Orochimaru's hideout, why Gaara and Shinki were even there, and so on, just like the Momoshiki stuff with Boruto and Sasuke, but they gave us what we needed at the time. Shinki's emotionally resonant last stand, and that's all I wanted from the Sasuke flashback. You don't have to show Momoshiki, even if he's there the entire time. Just show the scene from an angle where we can't see him. Problem solved. So yes, I do think the Shinki flashback was executed better than the Sasuke one. Continuing though, another thing that was already pretty clear but is put on full display in this scene is Matsuri's intelligence, both logically and emotionally. Unlike Jura, who only seems to understand logic and is lacking in the emotional understanding department, Matsuri seems to understand both. So well in fact that she doesn't even feel like a shinju. She feels like a regular human villain, which I personally like because each shinju seems to have a varying level of humanity within them, which is going to shape the direction of their character arcs. I still need to make these videos, but for those of you who've seen Hunter x Hunter, there's a ton of similarities between the first 4 shinju and the Chimera Ants, specifically Meruem and the Royal Guards, and these similarities show us the immense potential of these shinju's character journeys. Maybe it won't end up being as good as I hope, but I still think we'll get some interesting arcs out of these characters. Now, an interesting detail about this scene, which I'm sure you've already noticed, is that Matsuri and Gaara are in one of Orochimaru's hideouts. I'll spare you the breakdown of the potentially strange timeline issue, but the one explanation that alleviates most of these problems is that Matsuri and Gaara were in a different Orochimaru hideout from the one Koji and Boruto are using, and by the time she runs into Gaara and Shinki, Matsuri has already discovered that Boruto has an ally via her unexplained research that will hopefully be explained soon. This scenario implies that Matsuri and Gaara have an idea of where Boruto and Koji are, but haven't found them quite yet. In which case, the Q panel with Koji in chapter 13 most likely has nothing to do with Gaara and Matsuri. It is instead either just Wind or someone else arriving, like Orochimaru or Log or something. Now, I actually like this idea because it exemplifies the fact that Orochimaru has hideouts all over the place that he used to bounce around in between. He doesn't just have one per nation, he has several per nation. The other thing I like about this is the fact that Matsuri doesn't just know that Boruto has an ally, she's on their trail. She's already figured out that they're using one of Orochimaru's hideouts. This increases the tension because Boruto and Koji are no longer safe. It's only a matter of time before Code or the Shinju find them. This is good. It adds a sense of urgency like a ticking clock. Now, something I'm curious about is why Gaara and Shinki's team were even in Orochimaru's hideout to begin with. Did they follow Matsuri there? Were they already searching the place? Were they on a hunt for Boruto or Koji too? I don't have a lot to say on the topic, but it's something I'm personally interested in, especially since Kankuro never mentioned to Shikamaru that Gaara was in Orochimaru's hideout when they were on the phone. Shikamaru probably thinks the Sand Village was attacked when that wasn't the case, so I'm hoping more will come from this and it won't just get glossed over. Let me know in the comments why you think Gaara was in Orochimaru's hideout though. Overall, I thought this was a pretty good start of the chapter and definitely better than the Sasuke flashback where we skipped the entire fight. However, there are a few weird things about this scene that I want to address. First off, while I absolutely think this design was an upgrade from his original design in part 1, Shinki's design in Two Blue Vortex makes no sense. He literally looks younger than he did in part 1. You can unironically swap the designs and it would make more sense. I do think he looks better, but it doesn't make any sense. Age aside though, I understand this isn't the end all be all and it's just something I personally found annoying. But what happened to Shinki wearing his Iron Sand cloak? That was literally one of the trademarks of his design and a combat relevant strategy as he literally wore his defensive armor at all times. Not wearing the Iron Sand as a jacket quite literally turned him into a tree. If Shinki was still wearing his Iron Sand jacket, the clock grind probably would have broken its teeth and Shinki would have been fine. It's not like the clock grind bit through his Iron Sand dome protecting Gaara. It feels like Ikimoto changed Shinki's trademark design trait for the sake of the plot so that Shinki could somewhat reasonably become a tree. But it would have been way cooler and more impactful if we actually saw Shinki's Iron Sand jacket crumble apart because he exhausted himself so much. So when he makes his final stand to protect Gaara, it's that much more meaningful as he pushes himself basically to the brink of death to save his father. Now you can argue that did happen off screen, and that's why he wasn't wearing the Iron Sand jacket, but we didn't see that. He could have just stopped wearing it. We don't know. It's not like it would have been that hard to show a panel of Shinki's Iron Sand jacket falling apart. Literally just show that panel real quick and then have Gaara put them in those sand balls to help him escape. You don't even need a whole page, although I'd recommend adding an extra page of everyone looking exhausted anyway. And visually, this adds a cool layer of symbolism as Shinki's defenses are physically and narratively stripped away by Matsuri, leaving him in his most vulnerable state as he's forced to make a choice. Either leave his father behind so that he can live and protect the Sand Village himself like his father wanted, or sacrifice himself so that his father can live and protect the Sand Village instead. Skipping out on these moments makes the fight feel cheaper. And on that note, why are Gaara and Shinki even struggling with the claw grime? Gaara's mom-powered automatic sand defense should have just flown in front of the claw grime without Gaara or Shinki having to do anything. Even if he's injured, Gaara clearly still has chakra and strength left given that he's using his sand to help Shinki, Yodo, and Araya escape, and the ground is literally covered in sand for his mom to protect him. I understand if they can't beat Matsuri or whatever, but the claw grime should really be non-factors here. Gaara and Shinki are well equipped to fighting multiple weaker opponents like the claw grime at the same time. And honestly, part 1 Shinki could probably body the claw grime easily with all those insane jutsu he used on Boruto and Sarada in the anime. So it just feels so seeing these weak-ass claw grime be such a challenge for Gaara and Shinki, when Shinki literally bodied base Kawaki without even trying in the anime, and a nerfed base Kawaki is handling these claw grime no problem. A much better approach would be to have Matsuri counter Gaara's sand in some way, such as to make it too heavy to keep up by soaking it with water style like those ninja from the Village of Artisans in the last filler arc in Naruto Part 1. Moeki has water style, so there's no reason why Matsuri can't use it too. And I'm not saying this has to be the way Matsuri gets around Gaara's sand, I'm just using it as an example. And please don't come at me saying, but maybe she did do that to Gaara, you're jumping to conclusions. All they had to do is have Matsuri say, all that water must make your sand pretty heavy, huh? It's too slow to keep up anymore, or something like that. They don't even have to show it. They just have to say it. But anyway, that covers everything I have to say about this Shinki flashback other than how Matsuri found the hideout to begin with, which is something I'm saving for its own video. The next part of the review will be about the Code Ryu and Jura section, which was my favorite part of the chapter, so stay tuned for that one as well. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought about this flashback and any of the topics I mentioned, or things you think I missed. Watch this video here for more of my content, subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.